Welcome to Death Holler, the place of haunted hearts and haunted homes. We welcome you to Death Manor, the home that boasts the most ghosts. Come on in. We've been expecting you. Take a look around. You might see someone that you recognize. Do you hear those voices? That's just the Reverened Dr. Death and Llareyna. They're so happy to see you. Sit back and relax. Make yourself at home. Your new home. And remember, when you're in Death Holler, listener discretion is always advised. We hope you enjoy the show.
Next movie that we're discussing is Llarona, 2019. Also, Not the Curse of Llarona, which is one of the movies in the Conjuring universe.
Oh, shit. I watched The Curse of Llarona.
Oh, I'm sure you did. Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. That piece of shit will be covered during the Conjuring universe seasons. So there you go. We will cover that during just the Warrens, I guess, is what we should call that season. But you know, whatever. We'll see how that goes.
Okay, so wait a second. Which one are we covering? Because I've seen almost all Llarona movies, so I'm not worried. But
this is the one that was on Shudder exclusive. It's set in South America, in I believe, I don't know if it's Brazil necessarily. I'm probably speaking of my ass on that one. But anyways, it is the general who is on trial for the crimes he committed, and then his house has a visit from Llarona.
Oh, fuck. I did not watch it. I don't think I've seen this one.
I don't think I've seen it either.
There's so many. There's like 3 or 4. I mean, did you know that there was like 3 or 4 Llarona films?
Oh, I know. There's like an old black and white version of it, I think.
I haven't seen the black and white one. I don't think we can review this one. Because the one that you and I saw back in the day, that was like 2014, wasn't it?
No, 2019.
No. He's talking about the one from 2019, and I don't believe I've seen that one.
That's the one we have. I didn't watch that.
Hold on. No, because The Curse of Llarona was in 2019, and we're not talking about that one. We're talking about the Shudder one. Yeah, I don't think, fucking Sean, we haven't seen it.
Well, we're in an impasse here, folks. I don't know what to tell you on that.
Okay.
You can cover your Lllaronas, which I have not watched, other than The Curse. I mean, and like I said, we can save that one for another time, and I can go over this movie, and then you can, and we can do it that way, I guess.
Okay, so. Yeah, and I'll just edit the audio to kind of fix. I can edit the video too to cut all this out. So that's hella funny.
So, which version of Llarona did you watch? I'll put it out there for you.
Okay, so clearly I've seen The Curse of Llarona, and I'm not going to give away how I feel about that one. And I know we've seen one. I mean, it's from back in the day. And I don't mean back in the day like black and white, but I want to say it was like 2014 for some reason or something around there. And I think it was in all Spanish. Like, I think it was one of those films that I had to read the subtitles. Me, a Latina, reading subtitles on a Spanish movie.
It's pretty bad.
Yes, but, and it was actually pretty decent. Like, it wasn't terrible. So it wasn't like great, but it had some really good scares. And there was a part 1 and a part 2. Of it, and part 2 was horrible. And then, of course, I've seen the Netflix cartoon Llarona. That was how I introduced my kids to it, which was not a good way, because Llarona is a staple in Mexican history and lore that we use to make sure our kids stay in bed. Now, our kids stay in bed, so I guess I didn't have to do that. Because it was like, oh, you better like keep your feet covered and don't get out of bed or La Llorona's gonna grab you. Legit. That's like, and Grandma Beans and the family, like they would all go outside your window and they would make the crying woman sounds and everything. So that was how we grew up. We were fucking terrified of her. My kids really like the Netflix series. They thought it was cool. Also, all in Spanish. So, unfortunately, they did not learn Spanish.
Just go ahead and discuss like the lore of the movie, and then or the lore of the folktale, and I'll kind of go over this movie that I watched at least, and we can kind of go from there.
Do you want me to compare The Woman in White and La Llorona?
Well, I mean, if you just want to cover the lore of what La Llorona is, because I don't think some of our listeners might know what that's about. They might have heard the name, but they have no clue. Like there are so many people that I hear on podcasts or on YouTube videos that I would suspect should know this information, and they can't even say Llorona right. And so I know that they don't know what the actual history of it is. So
okay, so in a nutshell. Let me break it down wiki for you. La Llorona is almost like it's the Hispanic version, almost like Hansel and Gretel, but the kids, end up dying. In a jilted lover type situation where she's a woman who was growing up, or she's married to a man, has her children, things seem to be going great, and for one reason or another, it could be that he was cheating on her and leaving her, and she was going to take his children, or he flat out just did, and she couldn't afford to feed the children. So it could go either way. It could be like, oh, I'm doing this as revenge against the man that I loved. I'm going to kill his children because he was going to take them away from her. Or her children were literally starving to death, and she was going to basically end their lives for them so they wouldn't suffer anymore. So you kind of get both stories. Either way, from what I learned growing up, as she was trying to enter the pearly gates to heaven, she was denied because she killed her children. Whether she did it, out of a courtesy for them or whatnot, she was supposed to find the bodies of her children, and once she properly put them to rest, then she would be allowed to go to heaven. So the lore is that she is roaming the earth primarily at lakes and rivers, sometimes ponds, or area where there might be a big puddle. And
very much water-based.
Yes,
yeah.
Very much water-based. And if she is able to achieve that, she will take your children thinking that they are hers. And when she brings these bodies, to, whether it be the pearly gates or the crossroads, and they find out that it's not her children, she has to continue the search. And she will continue the search and take children until she finally achieves her goal. Now, you would think, and this isn't anything that has ever been addressed, that bringing so many children that are not yours, killing so many kids, and bringing their bodies and saying, here, heaven, this is my fucking child, they'd be like, okay, you just get a ticket to hell, okay, at this point, because you're just fucking killing kids for no fucking reason. So that's never addressed, because ultimately, much like a lot of the Christmas lore we've heard, the witch lore, this is stuff that is used to scare your children into behaving, basically. So that is the lore that we have. And I'm not going to go over the woman in white, but La Llorona is basically kind of a woman in white too, because both of the stories are similar in the fact that you have jilted lovers. Majority of the woman in white lore all across the world is her being jilted by either a fiance or a lover. Either she's married and she has a lover and her husband is involved where he kills them, or she thinks she can make a man fall in love with her and really he's in love with his wife. So it just circles around this woman that is obsessed with a man and becomes this evil entity because she isn't getting what she wants, or is killed in a horrific way that now she's doomed to haunt the world until she finds some sort of peace.
Now, the woman in white that I'm aware of, at least for the European, Anglo-European lore, is mostly like this. It's usually a woman who is, like you said, the jilted lover. She usually commits suicide in those tales, and and she usually waylays men as they travel down the road or whatever. It started out carriages, but then it was our horseback, and then it moved to cars. But like you'll see this woman in white, the damsel in distress, like off to the side of the road. You offer her a ride, and and that's and usually the man is cursed after he takes the ride with her, because that's that's part of the lore. So that's where the other version of the woman in white comes from, basically. So
yeah, in the 2019 Curse of La Llorona, you'll notice that water just kind of happens. It's like she's making it happen. And folks, that is fake. Much like La Llorona. In Mexican lore, she could not just make that happen. And that was also another scare tactic, was, stay away from water so children wouldn't drown. So there was that. And there was also a stay away from water in like the rain or whatnot, because you could get sick. So she was used as a scare tactic for many different things to, like, once again, make your children kind of stay in line. Don't do this, don't do that.
But kind of in the style of a Grimm's fairy tale, it's teaching your kids real adult issues, but through the lens of like a story, basically.
Yes, exactly. So that's what we have in terms of the lore.
Okay. Do you want me to cover the one that I saw and like go over all the stuff that I've got about it? I mean,
absolutely.
It's her. You'll have to pronounce some of these names for me. I cannot do these. I don't know how to even start on some of these names, to be honest.
Okay.
But anyways,
hold on. Let me go. Actually, no, you put it down on the notes. So, okay. Perfect.
Yes. So it's La Llorona, the 2019 Shudder exclusive, directed by, how do you, it's Bustamante, but I don't know how to say his first name.
I don't know if it's Jaro. That's how I think it's pronounced, or if it's just flat out Jaro. But Jaro is how you would say in Spanish.
Jaro Bustamante, okay. It's also written by him, along with Lisandro Sanchez, and music by Pascal Reyes, or Pasquale Reyes. Budget I couldn't find. It did make a box office of $300,000 internationally, because where it's a Shudder exclusive, it never really got like a theater release. Principal players in this is Maria Mercedes Coroy, who plays Alma. She is La Llorona in this. And she's also in the new Black Panther Wakanda Forever that's coming out. Ooh. So she's really stepped up from an independent film going to a big Disney production, which I kind of have a feeling is going to bomb too, but that's a whole other argument. And then X Canul is like one of Jero's first films. So she was in that, and he's one of those directors that, if they'll work with him again, he'll, have him in his movie.
You have a job for life.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's good whenever there's a loyalty there amongst everybody involved. We have Sabrina de la, how do you say that? H-O-Z. I don't know. Hoz?
Yeah, Hoz.
Okay. She plays Natalia. She was in Temblores or Tremors, not the movie with Kevin Bacon, not the great one. Margarita Kenefic, who plays Carmen, Julio Diaz, who plays Enrique, Maria Talon, who plays Valeriana, who's also an ex-Canul, like I said, and she was also in Tremors, or Temblores, and then Juan Pablo Alislager, who plays Latana, who was in Temblores and then The Killing Hour. So but there's a reason they're all in the same movies. It's Guatemalan is where this is from, and it's a very small filming community down there. And I'll get into the reason why, but I mean, these people are badasses for even filming what they did, considering that their legit government wants to kill them for some of the stuff they put out.
Holy
shit.
There you go,
before we get into it. And the reason why is the synopsis for this movie. An aging Guatemalan dictator put on trial for the atrocities he committed while in power is found guilty but not convicted because a higher court overrules the verdict. The locals, furious over the decision, conduct protests that force the dictator and his family to become prisoners within their palatial mansion. During this time, with most of the household waitstaff gone, a haunting young woman named Alma hires on as a maid. A strange phenomena begins shortly thereafter. The crimes of the past are paid back to their transgressors. The wailing of a mother who lost her children signals the beginning of the end for those who wronged her, and the ghosts of those who were massacred get their revenge. So the gist of this movie is, in this one, is that La Llorona, and it tells you this throughout the movie, and I really like the way that it does it because it tells it's the wife of the dictator who's been defending him for years, saying that, you know, he didn't do all those atrocities to the native, you know, Guatemalan people. And there's a big divide about that in the movie too. It's like the dictator and his family are all like almost porcelain white. And then, of course, the natives that they, you know, suppressed and killed over the years were all the darker Guatemalans. And that happens in those countries. I mean, they say it only happens in America. It happens in those countries in South America. So whatever they, you know, but the gist of it is that his wife stood by him for years, made up every excuse in her head that, you know, it's like, oh, well, there was all these whores coming to the, you know, military, brought into the military bases of these natives. But my, you know, husband, the general, didn't sleep with them. His men did, you know, pure lie, because he was, you know, raping everybody he could get a hold of too. He's just one of those guys. But he's like real old in age, and so is she. So like, you know, and it looks like he's losing his mind too, because he's shooting. He almost shoots his wife at one scene early in the movie because like he hears the wailing. That's how the whole thing starts. He hears a woman crying somewhere in the house, and he goes to investigate with his pistol drawn. And when his wife walks in a white dress, you know, kind of fitting, he tries to shoot her, and then like the security in the household kind of locks him down, and they take that away from him. And the rest of the movie is like he's dying of cancer too, I believe, is what the movie's showing. And his daughter is like actually is a doctor, and she's helping treat him because after they had those trials. And all these native women come out to talk about their stories about how they were raped, how their families were killed in front of them. They have this traditional dress on as they're speaking that makes them look really creepy too, because they look like they're these ghostly spirits inside of this like traditional outfit. But like they get the verdict they want. The court convicts him of the crimes that he's, you know, they're accusing him of. But then like he's also got friends higher up in the government, and they overturn the ruling. So the rest of the movie is them like they're constantly having like people outside protesting, singing, and you got all that going on outside the home. And it's a good use of the budget too, because of the fact that they can sequester all of the main actors and actresses into one location and give you the vibe of that there's a bigger world going on outside of it, but they're kind of caught in this island, if you will, you know, while it's all going on. But they can't set foot outside of it, because if they do, then they might get attacked by the protesters.
Yeah.
So the waitstaff knows that he committed this stuff, or at least heard about it. They refuse to work for him, except for like one main loyal waitstaff person, Llareyna, I believe is her name. And so they get this woman in from the town who they've heard about called Alma. And the way she comes in, the way the actress portrays her, she's just taunting right from the get-go. She's got these big, you know, like, you know, soulful eyes, and like, you know, she looks like that she's seen some shit, like even whenever she comes into the place.
In Mexico, she probably has.
Well, yeah. And the thing is that she's very quiet. She's very to herself, but and the water aspect works in real neat in a couple of ways. They've got a pool, first of all, that they've got in their palace. Mm-hmm. And so the granddaughter of the general, she's always taking that granddaughter and having her like see if how long she can hold her breath underwater, you know, and like it's, and it looks like she's trying to drown her, but she's not. I'll get in the reason why in a little bit, but it looks like she's you know, like, and that's what the family assumes, but that's not what she's doing. But also every time that she gets near water, like, you know, sinks, faucets and all that, they turn on mysteriously by themselves. And so it works in the water aspect that you talked about.
Yeah.
You know,
Interesting.
she uses, I mean, she's very good looking. So, I mean, of course, the general, like, you know, that's part of the way that she starts the family unraveling. That's part of her, you know, against him at least, because she's totally not against them at all. Like she's all about getting the general his due. So,
Okay.
The generals sees her like coming back in from a night swim at one scene in the movie, and of course he goes in there and they catch him basically jacking off to her while she's like trying to take a shower. And so whenever they do that, then the wife can no longer defend him and say that he wasn't one of those creeps or whatever. Now it starts playing on her. Now she's turned against him, and then it goes from there to show that like every night his wife, the general's wife, is like having these dreams that she's in like this rural Guatemalan village, and she's trying to protect her two children as soldiers surround them and try to keep them, or you know, and trying to find them and kill them basically.
Yeah.
And so she's reliving Alma's past is what it amounts to in the movie. It shows her at one point in time, they've had to hide inside this shack for so long that she ends up like basically pissing herself. And then the you know, in the dream, and then in real life, she really does. And, you know, wets the bed. And so the daughter, you know, being the doctor, says, well, maybe it's just, you know, old age or something. But no, it was because she was in such a vivid dream. And then later on, the whole thing comes back about the breathing underwater, because Alma did that originally for her own two children. The soldiers were getting ready to come in there and brutally murder them, and there was a creek nearby, so she told them to dunk underneath and to hold their breath as long as they could, so that maybe the soldiers would pass them on by. And unfortunately, they caught them and killed them anyway. So, so that's how it works in that aspect of the La Llorona, you know, lore. And of course, she was brutally raped and killed by the general too. So I mean, you know, and the wife eventually sees that, and that's like the big culminating scene of the movie, is that they're all gathered around. One of the neat things they start doing is they start noticing that a lot of the people who were declared killed by the general and like his, you know, cohort, they've got pictures of them or whatever, because that was the protesters holding up. Have you seen my family member? They disappeared or whatever. They were assumed dead. Well, they start appearing in the protest crowd throughout the movie. So more and more of the ghosts keep coming in, you know, throughout the movie. And at the very last scene, they're totally surrounded by all these spirits who have made their way inside the gates of the mansion and are staring them down. Alma is nowhere to be seen anymore, but she is possessed, the wife of the general, and she finally sees the final scenes about how they killed Alma's kids, and then, you know, and then attacked her, and she sees that the general was the very one that attacked and raped Alma and told and you know, ordered for the kids to be killed. And so whenever it switches back to the, you know, what she's no longer seeing in her dream to the real world, they're all, you know, gathered around the circle around the general, who is having like kind of an asthmatic attack or something like that. She basically strangles him to death and kills him. So Alma uses the wife of the general to get her final revenge against him, which is pretty cool, you know, way to show that scene. Really well done nighttime scenes too. Like they work in like this plague of frogs at one point, and like just the way that they have the water and the fog moving off of the water, and the way that Alma, you know, is kind of gliding through the house at night or whatever. It's like, it's not in a necessarily supernatural way, but not supernatural way. You have to see the movie to know what I'm talking about, but they do a really good job with those scenes. Really creepy. The Guatemalan like natives music is being played in the background during all of this, so it kind of creates this otherworldly vibe. But the daytime scenes are kind of overlit and kind of look more like a soap opera, so it kind of, the daytime scenes are not that good, you know, but that's because of the budget and everything.
I'm looking at photos
really
though.
like
Some of the
it.
scenery is really beautiful in that Latin aspect, you know.
They did a great job with it, and they did a great job with the limited scenery that they could use. And that was, I'll get into that in the trivia, but they could only use that mansion legitimately to film in, because they were threatened by their government if they tried to use anything else.
Yeah.
Because that Guatemalan government does not like the fact that they portrayed the previous leaders as being dictators that did anything more than fart rainbows and create everybody's greatest dreams. It's one of those type of situations. But really well done movie. I mean, it's got the political bent to it. It's got the message to it, but the message is not. The message is worked into the movie. It's not like overly preachy, about it. And stuff like that does happen in these third world, South American countries. So, I mean, it's believable that, that they could have went on a rampage like that and created a creature like Alma, as a kind of a spirit of vengeance.
Yeah. This film follows a more traditional story, basically exactly what this film was, of a general that is going and massacring towns, because that's one of the tales of this. And he leaves his wife behind, and she thinks that he's going to come back to war, and he's really out kind of philandering and doing basically what you're hearing. And when he does come back, he is crazy, and he's basically ordering her killed, as well as the children. So it's another version. It is supposed to be the traditional story, but it's not a story that I had ever heard prior to more recent times. So I don't know, in terms of there being so many different lores or types of lore for La Llorona, I don't know which one is the original.
It's one of those stories that's easily moldable to whatever the region is and whatever the cultural climate is of the region that it's from. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, if you want to work in the politics of the region and stuff like that, you very well could, because the base story kind of fits that mold if you need it to.
Yeah. Now, I know when it comes to, I won't be able to give any input on the story, the acting, or the sound, and I know you only get so much when it comes to stills of the movies, but holy crap, it looks pretty gorgeous in terms of what I look for in a film.
Those nighttime scenes are beautiful. And they do such a good job. I mean, like that actress they got, she conveys almost entirely everything through her face, more than, because she barely speaks anything in the movie. It's because she's one of those, and where she's the staff, she's not expected to speak to begin with. She's there to do as she's told.
Yeah.
And so, it's a nod and a quick, yes, sir, yes, ma'am type situation from her. But then, whenever you see her interacting with the granddaughter, when you see her interacting, coming through the house, whenever, when you're seeing her, and maybe the general's seeing her, but nobody else is, she puts off a different vibe or whatever, just through her body language and just her facial expressions. So she does a really good job.
Yeah.
I thought you were describing Sri Lanka.
As far as the acting and the music and all that, it services the story. They do a pretty good job. The guy who plays the general, he does, even though he's like this older guy that's he's always got a cigarette that he's smoking or whatever, which is kind of funny considering Papa Charlie. But
yeah.
He's opposite of Papa Charlie. He projects that it's funny because he knows how to work his angle. There's one scene in the movie where he's in the hospital right after his ambulance has been attacked on the way, because he fakes being sick or something right at the, whenever they declare him to be guilty of all the crimes at that, judicial committee. And then he starts fake. It's almost like, a Fred Sanford, oh, I'm dying of a heart attack. And then they rush him to the hospital. Well, before they get there, they put him in an ambulance, and there's a real good scene where the whole ambulance is shaking because the protesters are so riled up. And when he gets to the hospital, he's basically like Mr. Rico Suave with the nurse, the young nurse that's there, giving you another hint that, back in his day, he was definitely a poonhound, and that sort of thing. He was, because he's sitting there and he's giving her the eye, and he's just like, if I was a few years younger, you'd be down here doing the business to me, and she kind of just chuckles and walks away. So, but he knows how to play that defenseless angle when he needs to around his family too, to make them think that he's not the terrible monster that he truly is.
But he is.
Yeah, piece of shit, and he gets what he deserves at the end of the movie. And the cool thing is that it doesn't end there with him dying. There's another scene after that. He's had a scene earlier in the movie where him and his top tier, like lieutenants, are all gathered together, and one of them in particular is freaking out. It's like, well, if you go down, we go down, and he just basically, that's when he's showing his force of power in the movie, and he tells that guy to, don't be a bitch, like we'll take this like men, and and we'll get through it. But whenever he dies, one of his lieutenants is shown at the end of the movie, and he's kind of like walked in there after he's heard that the general's passed away, and he's kind of freaked out, and he's at the urinal in the bathroom, and there's nobody else, and everybody else leaves, and all of a sudden he hears a woman crying off in the distance, and it kind of hints that he's next, like she's after him now.
Yeah, for any I don't care who you are, for any Latino that hears the weeping it doesn't matter where you are. If you're by yourself and you hear an echoing, weeping woman somewhere in your surroundings, you're fucking out of there. Like, it's like, get the fuck out. We don't care what's happening. It's not cool. We will shit ourselves. Yeah.
Anybody who's played the game Left 4 Dead would be the same way, because
the whale or the banshee, is
the
it?
witch.
The witch, yeah.
Oh.
God damn, that's some scary shit. Whenever you hear the weeping, you're like, oh God, don't shoot. There's one of them around here.
Yeah, especially in the second one, that scene when you're going through the cornfield and the water's starting to flood in. It like you can't see anything, and all you hear is a witch crying while you're in the cornfield.
So basically, you have a Llarona in Left 4 Dead.
Yes.
Yes. She's even in white, I believe. So it works.
She's in a wife beater. She is. She's in this torn up wife beater shirt.
Okay. I would like to announce that the films that my husband and I watched, and I was very wrong on the timeline. The first one was from 2006. And I don't know when the second one came out. But I'm sure not very long after that was The Whaler. And it was basically based on La Llorona. I don't know for sure that they were completely in Spanish. I can't remember now. I thought that they were, but that could just be my memory fucking serving me incorrectly. I almost think that we rented them off of Netflix back when it was renting the actual DVDs. Like they would mail you.
I thought we saw one in a theater.
No. We probably saw like The Curse of La Llorona. But The Whaler was really good in terms of slasher horror. Because when she basically got you, she was going to fuck your world up. Have you seen any of these movies, Reverend?
I have not, but The Whaler sounds like a movie about a chubby chaser to me. So,
much like the woman in white sitting across from you, babe.
Really?
It is not the whaler as in a whale.
I know. It's just funny. Whenever I heard that was the first thing I thought of. I was just like, okay, we're going to harpoon this bitch. Let's go.
Yeah, this movie is also called The Cry from 2005. When you look at the picture of her, which is pretty fucking creepy, it is titled The Whaler, La Llorona. So definitely a La Llorona film. A lot of Mexican. They had a Day of the Dead aspect in one of the films. And she's going to fucking get you. When you hear her cry, she is picking people off left and right. So if you're looking for a slasher type La Llorona film, this is the one I thought we were reviewing for whatever reason. You know, it's not our fault that when there's 900 La Llorona films out there, that something like this would happen.
Yeah, I mean, we discussed which one we wanted to cover, but I guess it might have just been lost in translation that I said a Shudder one I knew was pretty good.
I did not know. Well, of course I don't have Shudder because Shudder doesn't sponsor us.
You have access to Shudder. Don't start that.
I do not have
AMC Plus.
Oh wait, what? I can get through that?
Yeah,
I did not
you
fucking
get all
know
Shudder
that.
stuff through AMC Plus. Yeah,
AMC, thank you for not sponsoring us. We are subscribing, but if you want to sponsor us, we are looking for sponsors at the moment. So, Reverend, what is your rating of this film?
Well, let me give you some trivia about it first.
Okay,
I think this is interesting about it.
Okay.
So it was an official submission of Guatemala for the Best International Feature Film category for the 93rd Academy Awards of 2021.
Damn.
First Guatemalan film to ever be nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Foreign Language Film. La Llorona de los Cafetales, a 7.5 minutes long video by Pedro Bustamante, starring Maria Mercedes Caroy and featuring Gabby Moreno's version of the traditional song La Llorona, was featured in February 2020 as the film's official trailer. Speaking of that, it has a very cool song at the end of it that's like a traditional song about La Llorona. And it's like, it's kind of like one of those call and response type songs, where it will say a line and then it will repeat the line back, that type of thing.
Oh, yeah.
But they pronounce it La Llorona. Llarona. So I guess it's like the local pronunciation of the LL is what I looked up and saw. But it was interesting every time I heard it because I kept expecting the ya and it was cha. La Llorona.
La Llorona. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Do. No, it wasn't that one. But it's a very sad song. Like it's basically like, where are your children, Llorona, and then it goes on. It's like, and it talks about the war and, like you lost them and that sort of thing. But it's a very cool way in the movie. So,
yeah, if you know anything about, it's Guatemalan, so I don't want to be disrespectful. Specifically Mexican music is what I listen to, but the emotion, they will cry when they sing. So that's a big thing. Like you have to.
It almost has like a funeral dirge type like feel to it, even if it's not like like you would think a funeral dirge like in a European sense, like not the it's like a long like mourning song more than it is anything. Like they're mourning for Llorona, or Llorona in this case, like the fact that she suffered through all these hardships, she lost her children, and all this stuff. So that's how they kind of end the movie.
Yeah.
Because of the political nature of the story, the director had to shoot the film as quickly as possible and had to rely on the assistance and protection of both the French and Mexican embassies, as well as the Jesuit University for location shooting. Officials in Guatemala didn't want a film that painted the government there, even one that was no longer in power, as bad in any way.
Fucking shit. That's a good way to prove that you're not a dictatorship of a country.
Yeah, it's like, shut this down now. And then like, no, I'll go to some embassies and film in those. And that's how I'll get this movie out there. Bustamante was really careful to balance politics, reality, and horror within the script. He didn't want the horror surrealism to overshadow the real world violence. That's kind of the point of the movie. He kind of wanted to, talk about the region and some of their history. The film's low budget didn't allow for much world building, so the director worked closely with a sound designer, Eduardo Caceres, to fill the outside environment with sounds of people and pre-Columbian instruments and music, which, like I said, it's effective because the family at one point in the movie, like they have no peace, which they don't deserve, really. I mean, it's not the family's fault; it's the general. But like, I mean, they're constantly bombarded by people, protesting in song, protesting with music, like all the time. The street sets were built within the ambassador's house because even if they had been allowed to film on actual streets, they were too dangerous for filming. How about that, folks?
I mean, like,
if they filmed on the streets, they could have been killed in the process.
That is, I mean, I think that adds to the characterization of the movie and the people that are in it.
It's crazy because you have all these, like, I mean, we complain about the woke stuff, but you have these people who are legit, like, complaining about like, first world problems. And then you have this guy who's trying to film a movie and like, based upon his culture. And he's legit like, hey, he could have been killed over it because of the fact of, like what's going on in his country.
That's insane.
Crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Bustamante said the closed-in setting of the house was actually a positive challenge because it kept him close to the general and allowed some humanization of the character that would have been harder to accomplish without the close proximity, which is a fair point because, I mean, where you're closed in and you're stuck in that prison with the general, you get to see more of his, daily interactions, with everybody, and that kind of gives more... not humanization in the sense that you empathize with him. You don't. It makes more of a grayish person versus a stark, oh, he's the bad guy, type situation. It also fit the story because Latin American dictators tend to close themselves in from potential threats and narrow their exposure. So it does that is true. It does fit that way. The Shining and its use of light as well as dark to create horror was one of the director's inspirations. He was also inspired by the use of light and dark in the paintings by Diego Velázquez and Goya. And there is some friggin' horrific Goya photo or pictures I put in here in the show notes. But like, if you look down there, especially that last one of that creature that's like, eating another human being, like that giant,
Hey.
Goya was on some shit,
On some shit. Right? Oh my God, is that Black Phillip?
Yeah, it looks like Black Phillip's like, on the outside of a circle of, it looks like praying nuns or something. That's kind of crazy too.
I am sharing that in the video. Well, if I can show it on the video.
My rating for this movie is a 3.8. It's not the best movie out there. You can tell the budget constraints, but those nighttime scenes and the way they worked in the La Llorona like lore into this political type film, I think they did the director did a great job with it.
A 3.8 is not that bad because if you think about it, we're on the Rotting Corpses scale. It's 5, right? It's
yeah, 3.8
out of 5.
So I mean,
that's pretty
it's
decent.
Not terrible
considering it's.
Yeah.
I mean, a lower budget film. It's not. It's a Shudder exclusive, which those are gonna start coming more to light. I feel like we definitely love Shudder here on this podcast. So.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody's into claymation, you need to watch that movie Mad God. That's like a Shudder exclusive, I believe. It's on Shudder. That movie is friggin'. I mean, the visuals in it are fucked up beyond belief. It's literally just. I mean, I don't think there's any dialogue in it. There might be like one line if there's that much, but it's like this just hellscape of like claymation and like. I mean. I kudos to Phil Tibbets who did that movie because I mean the amount of patience it took to film all those little claymation sick twisted characters that he put in that movie is nuts.
Is it actual claymation? Is it stop motion?
It's stop motion.
Okay.
Yeah, it's for sure. Like, I mean, it's got a few scenes where there's like human actors in it, but they're very far and few in between.
I'm kind of glad you brought that up because the other day you were showing me the new comic. Well, it's like comics of the Leica films, Paranorman and Coraline, and those are stop motion, and it kind of brought to light. I don't think there's enough Leica films to do a season of Leica. But there might be enough stop motion because that would also include Nightmare Before Christmas, The Corpse Bride. Like, would we consider that as a season? How are we gonna integrate those films into Death Holler?
I don't know that you would do those a season. You could work those in. I was thinking you could work those in definitely during the April Fool's month because a lot of those have comedy aspects or whatever. To the seasons that they kind of fit in, like Paranorman zombie season for sure. Like that's one of the ones that would be there. I don't know about Coraline. I don't know what season that would fit in because it's like that otherness of the other family. I don't know what that's a whole genre of itself, like it's almost like Possession, but not quite there. It's like just, they're things that look like people, but not people. Like they're that's a genre of its own, but I don't even know what you would call that. So
horror fantasy. I know we talked about horror fantasy, actual horror fantasy, not the Lady in White. I'm just kidding. So it could almost fit in human horror too, possibly, but that's a little more far-fetched.
It could. By the way, Barbarian definitely fits in the human horror. So that will be during the human horror season for sure.
Yeah. And then there's also Kubo and the Two Strings. We cannot deny how some of these films they're for kids, but there are horror in them.
Yeah, he definitely puts like enough horror elements into those films that a horror fan should be able to enjoy them. I mean, I don't know how you could watch like Coraline and not like have some enjoyment out of it, at least a little bit, just because, I mean, as much as I dislike some of his hot political takes, Neil Gaiman or whatever is a master storyteller. And I mean, he made Coraline. So,
I mean, Leica, legend. Okay. So when it comes to Leica alone, films produced, we're talking Coraline, Kubo and the Two Strings, Paranorman, Box Trolls. I have not seen. I hear such good things about it though. The Missing Link.
I've heard good things about that one too.
Corpse Bride, which they did Leica do that? Because I know that's a Tim Burton, and not everything Tim Burton is.
Tim Burton produced it, but then he kicked it off to that other company, so maybe maybe it's within that realm or whatever. In which, I mean, the Corpse Bride itself is a movie that you were saying like the Nightmare Before Christmas. I don't know where that fits exactly because I'm thinking Nightmare might fit into like a monster movie season because there's monsters all in that movie. I don't know about the Corpse Bride because that's almost like a Lady in White.
Oh my gosh, honestly. She really is. Yeah. Okay, but and then it goes on other ones I'm not too familiar with. Well, dinosaurs I am, but Moon Girl and Shadow Play. There's also movies like Frankenweenie. That's stop motion, but it's not Leica, and that's more of a friendly horror. That's when bad animals go bad, That's April Fool's when bad animals go bad. So, I mean, yeah, you're right. We're just gonna have to fit them in where we can. But yeah, you're right. Corpse Bride is kind of along that lines of Lady in White.
Well, let's just review it real quick.
Let's do it. Here. Fuck yeah. Folks, congratulations. This is a bonus part of the show that we were not planning at all.
We're not going to have much history about it, but I mean, yeah, it's Tim Burton produced, got the same animation style, got Johnny Depp, Helena Bonham Carter, you got them as some of the main folks in that. I think I like the story of it well enough. Now, to me, it's not as entertaining as Nightmare Before Christmas. There's the good. It has a good beginning and it has a good end, but I feel like the middle it kind of just meanders for a bit. I don't know how you feel about that.
There's so much fucking shit that I love about the Corpse Bride. For one, just this is a joke more than anything, but I'm serious. How the two that are kind of being forced into marriage because money is a thing back in the day. So basically, I mean, I don't know, like in this film it doesn't seem like there's any kind of oh God, what is that called? What you have to pay in order to get the bride. There's a specific word for it.
Dowry.
A dowry, yes. The one I was joking about for little Lucifina.
Yeah.
Telling her there's a big dowry on her right now in the Scooby Gang. Between the children in the Scooby Gang. But Victor and Victoria, I like their names.
And then it's Victorian times, so
yes.
It's a play on that too.
Absolutely. So. Here, let's go into the plot real quick. In this unnamed
real quick.
Oh, go ahead.
Real quick on the cast, it's got the great Christopher Lee,
yes.
who I failed to mention a few episodes back on the Lord of the Rings guy I was talking about that I was completely blanking on. And then Danny Elfman plays Bone Jangles in this, so he's actually in this as well, in addition to doing the music. And Deep Roy, if anybody remembers the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory that Tim Burton did, which is not as good as Willy Wonka, the Gene Wilder version. It is not, and I'll fight you over that if you say that it is. However, Deep Roy was all of the Oompa Loompas in that movie, so there you go.
Oh my God.
Tim Burton working with the people that he's used to working with.
Here's some important information. Its budget was $40 million. It cost a lot of fucking money to make stop motion. It was produced, there's two companies, Tim Burton Productions, which clearly we discussed this, and Leica. Which is why we're bringing this up, because I decided to talk about Leica. Box office alone, are you ready for this? $118.1 million out of a $40 million budget.
That's exceeding the budget by quite a bit. That's good.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
Good.
So real quick on the plot, in an unnamed Victorian town, as we so mentioned, Victor Van Dort, fucking name, the son of a kind of rich fisherman. It's not really, they're not doing as great right now. And Victoria Everglot, the neglected and unloved daughter of impoverished aristocrats. So they were once doing well, but now they're somewhat impoverished, which is pretty.
They're basically trying to use their wealth in the movie to fish their daughter out to somebody who is actually wealthy, so they can get their money back. Is what they're trying to do.
the impoverished aristocrats prepare for their arranged marriage, which will stimulate raised and social class of Victor's parents and restore the wealth of Victoria's family, according to the plan, which is a big fucking thing in that film. So they have this huge plan. Obviously, as the film goes on, we find out that neither of the family have anything really to offer, specifically Victoria's family, which is putting on the big gloat that they do.
They're dead broke, but they're assholes because they sit there and they act like they've got money, even in the face of the fact that they don't. Even when that's presented to everybody, they still act like uppity pieces of shit. So, I mean,
Yes.
you know, you got that going on for them. At least Victor's family is not wealthy. And I mean, even if they're in on a little bit of a grift trying to get him off to a, you know, rich, quote unquote, rich family, they're a little bit more humble about, you know, all their stuff. So
Absolutely. As it goes on, we find out, well, another prospect comes along, the villain in the story. We'll find out later on. With this, I won't go too deep into that. And then where does the corpse bride come in? Well, Victor actually kind of likes Victoria when he first meets her and is very nervous. He cannot get through the vows. We have a scene where he absolutely cannot get through his vows. He decides to, as he's walking home, to practice. And as he says his vows perfectly and places a ring on what appears to be a twig sticking out of the ground, it ends up being the corpse bride's finger, which brings her to life because in her death, we find out that she died by the hands of the villain and that
the pastor, if I remember right, wasn't he? Or not the pastor. He was that the one guy that came in there, the one guy that Victoria was going to be auctioned, you know, dowried off to or whatever, the suitor, like at the end of the movie or whatever.
Is it Lord Barkis?
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Lord Barkis Bittern, presumed wealthy visitor who appears at the wedding rehearsal. He just inserts himself.
The couple things about that when that scene where he's walking through or he's reciting those lines and he's walking off, and it reminds me a lot of The Night Before Christmas where Jack is walking with Zero, through the forest, and he's kind of like having that internal monologue, soliloquy that he's doing, amongst himself, and it kind of has got that same vibe that they've kind of hinted at. And that scene, that's one of the scenes I like in the Corpse Bride movie, is just because it's so creepy, the fact that he's out there in the middle of nowhere and there's this shallow grave that he is not even aware is there, and then that twig turns out to be one of her bony fingers, or her actual is it a ring finger or index? I can't remember which.
I thought it was an index. It looked like an index, but allegedly it was her ring finger.
But anyways, he perfectly, and if I remember right, when I first heard about that movie, it's based on a Russian legend of that's got it's the whole story's like that, about a woman who was jilted in her marriage or whatever, died either committing suicide, which is what they hint at in the movie, until it's revealed at the end she was actually poisoned, or going back to the whole woman in white who committed suicide vibes. But, that there was actually the story was that if you propose to her, that, you'd be bound to her, for eternity or something like that. So it's actually based on real lore.
Oh, yeah. And in this particular story, Victoria actually fell in love with the suitor, and she thought that they were going to run away and get married. He had convinced her to, gather her family's riches, jewels, as much as, he could, or she could. And when she went to go meet him in the exact spot she was murdered, that's when he took her down and took off with all her goods. It's only when he returns, also acting like Victoria's family, like he's this rich suitor, it's because he is dead broke and he needs to find out another way to kind of cash in. He thinks Victoria's
he's already used up all the money from the corpse brides that he stole from her. He's used it all up, so now he's needing the next con or whatever to get him through.
Yes, and let's not be disrespectful. Corpse bride name is Emily. If you haven't seen this film, I'm joking about being disrespectful. She's the corpse bride.
It's Helena Bonham Carter. I mean, it's fine.
Yes.
It's funny. Another Harry Potter, alum. There we go. I mean,
Yes. And
it all
also,
goes back.
and with Helena Bonham Carter, she has a job for life with Tim Burton. I mean, I don't know so much now. I think they're still on good terms. Clearly, she's the mother of his bastard children, as she likes to refer.
Yeah. I don't know if I don't think you're into Harry Potter that much, but
No.
they had just a quick aside, they had that whole HBO Max like reunion that they had recently, like this past winter, where they had like all of them come back and they were like talking about the movies like 20 years on and what they thought about them. Helena Bonham Carter was the funniest part of that. Like she was just fun, outgoing, like she didn't give a shit. She was like the cool aunt, when she came in there, like. And so, I mean, kudos to her, because you look at her, and I don't know, in a lot of her movies, she always plays like kind of the psychotic, I mean, of course, goth inspired, but I mean, and but like almost like she's like a, somebody who's chronically depressed or ready to commit suicide, but in real life, she's just like this bubbly, outgoing person. So it was just funny to see.
Yeah. So we put the basic premise of the story down. We know that there's two people kind of being forced into a marriage. They do kind of like each other. We know that their families are both kind of poor. We know that there is a villainous suitor who is out of money and trying to cash in on what he thinks is Victoria's rich family. And we have his dead bride to be that is coming back for vengeance. Let's get into what we liked about the film, or in general, things we know about the film.
Well, I mean, I do like the scenes in the afterlife. I feel like they were done slightly better by another film later on, Coco, but I do like the after, like this version of the afterlife. It's not quite the Day of the Dead, but it's got that vibe going to it. A lot of them are skeletons. They've decayed to that point, and I think only a few of them have the zombie look to them. The claymation is great in this movie. They took all of the things that they learned while making Nightmare and improved upon it. They got the perfect actors and actresses to play the parts. I mean, Johnny Depp is, great as the character of Victor. And then Helena Bonham Carter is like Emily, the corpse bride. She does a great job. Christopher Lee is the pastor, like eating up the scenery like he always does. I just feel like the thing for me is that middle section of the movie, it just keeps going back and forth, showing a lot. I mean, it's for a purpose, but like the scenes with Victoria's family and how they're trying to like win this scumbag over, even though they don't realize that he's already sold on the whole thing because he's got ulterior motives.
Yeah.
That bores the shit out of me in the middle of the movie. It really does. Like it's only they do this for a reason. But the only part of the world that has any color to it, any kind of vibrancy, is the world of the dead, because they're trying to make a point politically about how the Victorian age was all about, and that kind of goes back maybe to the the reason a Woman in Black was the snooze that it was toward the end, is that you had to have this, you had to be just a bland, like person. You couldn't really show any emotion. You couldn't really, be out there in any way, shape, or form, because it was just improper to be any other way. And they kind of point out how during this time period, the dead had more fun than the living did, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, they really drove that home, which was so funny. I'm trying to think of what the song was called.
It's even funnier whenever the dead come back later on.
Oh yeah,
and like and like the dead are like living it up. They're like how you doing, grandson, and like and then and it's the old grandpa, and then like the mom and dad are giving a look like that's not the way that somebody of your station should be acting around children. Like that whole thing. Like they keep
Can we talk about the scenery? I know you kind of brought it up a little bit, but I wanted to also mention, so, aside from you, yes, setting a tone, they were very specific about what kind of tone they were setting. The grayness of the film when you're supposed to feel cold and drawn, and the vibrance of the film when you're supposed to feel light. So when Victor first meets Victoria and he's playing the song on the piano, beautiful, by the way, I loved that scene. And she kind of joins him. But there's a lot of grayness. They had just met each other. They'll know each other. They have to try to get to know each other. But I physically feel cold when I'm watching some of the gray scenes. How does that affect you?
Oh, the scene in particular, the beginning of the movie scene where he's like, she's frozen underneath, and like he doesn't realize that that's, her finger that he's putting the ring on.
Yeah.
Like that whole thing just gives such a cold vibe to it that, I mean, you can actually, I mean, if you're watching it during like a heavy time of AC going on at your house, or it's the middle of winter, you actually get a chill just from the way that they've got the colors. Cause I mean, he's kind of grayish white anyways. And then like, she's got that bluish color when she comes out. So, I mean, like it all feeds into that.
Yeah. And then of course the Remains of the Day song is what it's called, where they're basically, again, having more fun being dead than alive, having more of a party downstairs. So much color and so much life after death. It's which is a... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's an interesting, comparison, but also it's kind of a hopeful comparison because, you expect in a movie like this, the Land of the Dead to be just like this down place, but they're just enjoying every minute of it, because, there's no more pain and they get to, spend time with the people they actually want to spend time with. And, and nobody looks down on them for acting a certain way or being a certain way anymore. So,
the voice actors selling not only the area they're in, but also the time that they're in.
It does a good job, and it's got that weird Burton aesthetic to it where, the buildings are, odd proportions and, they're different angles all over the place. It's definitely got the Tim Burton stank on it, if you want to call it that. So yeah,
a lot of good sound and scenery. Sound for the scenery. I mean, you've got the echoey, empty, huge Victorian houses, with the, tile floors. You can't tell what type of floors they are, but they sound like either cement or tile, Yeah,
it'd probably be like stone during that time period or something. So, yeah.
Yeah, you can hear the footsteps. You can hear the echoes. You can hear, when Emily's coming, the wind whistling and bringing her, very good sound. Obviously, we talked about the music. Nothing in a Tim Burton film, everything in a Tim Burton film that Danny Elfman is producing music-wise, it's going to fit the scene. There was nothing that didn't fit in terms of the music.
Yeah, and it had that, that general Danny Elfman score that, it's kind of the whimsical mixed with a little bit of you get a little bit of a mysterious, creepy vibe whenever it needs to be in there. He's real good at stuff like that. Even whenever he was in Oingo Boingo, they came up with that, sort of sound. So it works.
Yes. Okay. One of probably my most favorite things. And now Corpse Bride, I probably should have researched this first. It came out in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
I got married in 2009. I did not base my wedding off of Corpse Bride. I did base it off of Nightmare Before Christmas. So we did have that because we got married on Halloween. But I asked so many cake makers to make my cake like the Corpse Bride cake. And I don't know if you remember what that looks like, but it was basically busting at the seams. It was more rounded than anything. It wasn't just a straight up and down cake. And every different section of separation, there was skulls in each one, but it was bones that was separating each section. I at the time did not find anyone that was successful in doing it, so I had to have a Nightmare Before Christmas cake, which boo-hoo, poor me. But I've told people many regrets I've had. One, not wearing a black dress to my wedding. I really wish I had worn a classy black dress. And two, I wish I had found someone who could have made that Corpse Bride cake. Husband didn't care. He was just wanting to eat food, and he was dressed up, and he was there because he was told to be, so.
Did you end up at least getting like a cake decoration that had like a corpse bride and then like a, or a Victor looking groomsman on it or whatever?
It was a Jack and Sally on the hill.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
okay.
with surrounded by
'cause
pumpkins.
You had to go with that theme.
Yes, and then they did get pumpkins. They made pumpkins like the ones from Nightmare Before Christmas, and weird tree branches climbing up my tree. It was okay for what we paid compared to what you can get now. It would have been better, but I'm not going to dwell on that. The cake was fucking delicious.
That's one of the bad things in comparison to Nightmare, though, is that the songs are so good in Nightmare. Like that end song where Jack and Sally are like singing to each other.
yeah.
It's just like so good versus like, I can't really think of anything that stands out in The Corpse Bride as much as that. So,
yeah, not in terms of romantic. The music is good, though, but you just don't get the duet that you get, the lyrics more so in Nightmare Before Christmas. In Corpse Bride, you get one big song with the lyrics, but mostly you get music in Corpse Bride.
And I think that had more to do with like this behind the scenes thing that we'll probably cover again when we cover Nightmare. But like, there was a point where the writer for Nightmare fucked everybody over, and like he never actually turned in anything, and he was like just using the money that they gave him like front loaded to basically snort a bunch of coke, if I remember.
Yikes!
And so Danny Elfman, fell upon his lap since he was the only one who was actually doing anything at that time. He was writing the songs. They crafted the movie around the songs that Elfman had already came out with. So that's the reason that Nightmare probably stands out better that way.
Yeah.
Is because the movie was based, had to be
more
upon the music. Whereas this movie, Elfman probably came in after they, storyboarded and did everything they did, and he just added, the music to it. He wasn't as involved in this one.
Oh yeah, Nightmare Before Christmas, by all intents and purposes, is a musical, and I hate musicals. Storyline for The Corpse Bride. Strong storyline. Yeah, good.
It's like I said, it starts out really strong, ends pretty well. Like that whole scene where they have the big, comeuppance in the church where, the guy, gets it poisoned himself. And, and now he's finally drugged down into the land of the dead, and they're going to have the revenge on him now that, he's within their grasp. But the middle part of it, it's every time I watch it, it's like I check out. It's one of those, it's the middle part of that movie. It's like I'll be looking at my phone and I'll look up and I was like, oh, here's another, they're in the land of the dead. I'll watch this for a bit, kind of see, because they have that one guy who does like the Peter Lorre impersonation of the little worm, that's crawling through, Emily's body or whatever. But then, like, there's all those other scenes where they go back to the nondescript Victorian town, and I'm just like, snooze fest. It's supposed to be thematically, but at the same time, kind of loses me.
Good kind of, in terms of Woman in White, it's a good storyline.
It's a really neat variation on the theme.
Definitely, and I think visually, what enhances it is the gothy vibes that film gives. Everything around it is creepy. You're right. You were talking about the Tim Burton-y, like, awkwardly shaped buildings and things like that. And just little touches of details here and there, of skulls, skeletons, death, cemeteries, so much is what really kind of drew me in, is why I like the film so much. So
yeah, I like all that stuff, and it's got a very, the corpse aspect of it, the dead aspect of it, very European-ish version of like the dead vibes or whatever, even if it does have more Dios de los Muertos vibe at certain times because of the vibrant colors and all that.
Oh, yeah. For sure. They didn't take it too far, though, so I can appreciate that. I mean, save it for an actual Day of the Dead type film, like, obviously Coco and Book of the Dead. Book of Life, Book of the Dead. Oh.
Yeah, Book of Life, yeah.
This took a dark turn. So are we ready for ratings? Anything else? Is there anything else you want me to look up on the film?
No, I think that's it without going into any major trivia about it. I mean, that stands out to me as like covering the basis for it.
Well, let me see. Oh, hold on real quick. Before you go, let me see if there is anything that stands out, because I got Wikipedia pulled up. I'm not going to take it too far. Production, music release, see also. No, I don't really No.
Well, here's an interesting thing. The puppets were 9.8 to 11 inches tall, and some of the stages were so large that animators could actually fit through the set doors with minimal crouching. So they actually built sets that were about human size to film these little bitty puppets. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I kind of remember seeing the behind the scenes and the making of that. The behind the scenes of Nightmare Before Christmas is pretty fucking interesting too.
Oh yeah, for sure. Let's see. Composer Danny Elfman originally wrote the part of Bone Jangles, but they were supposed to get somebody else to sing it, but they couldn't. And just like they couldn't whenever they were filming or making Nightmare, and it fell back on Elfman to do the voice. But in this one, it was so brutal on his vocal cords that he was hoarse whenever he had to voice the character. That he was left hoarse when he had to voice the character.
Oh yeah, that was a pretty dramatic. That was different. At least in Nightmare Before Christmas, he sounded like himself. And it was him saying, you can't do this, right? I'm just going to fucking do it.
There's something so weird about that, though, in Nightmare, just comparing the two of them. It's Chris Sarandon, who was the vampire in the original Fright Night movie, and also Prince Humperdinck and the Princess Bride. He's doing the voice of Jack when he speaks, but then like Elfman's doing the singing voice, and they sound so close together that it doesn't even really sound like it's a different person in a lot of cases. I think that's insane.
Yeah.
In that movie.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. I did not know this. This is something that just came up right now, but Corpse Bride is based off of Jewish lore. It doesn't specifically say which lore specifically. Maybe their version of Woman in White. I don't know.
Yeah, Russian Jewish folk tales. What it says here, it says that it was, which was introduced by Joe Ranft to Burton while they were filming Nightmare, and then it says that they continued after this to go on and do Charlie and the Chocolate Factory right after because I guess they came out around the same time. They came out the same year, Charlie and Chocolate Factory and this, but I guess they were working on them almost simultaneously. So. That's kind of weird. It also says here that this is interesting for stop motion fans. When Victor plays the piano, he leans back and the nameplate says Harryhausen, which, was Ray Harryhausen's the one who did like the old stop motion that everybody, remembers from the 80s, the ones that had like the Jason and the Argonauts and, the stories like that, where they had like the stop motion Cyclops, stop motion Medusa, and all that sort of thing.
Good God. Yeah, there's a lot of lore on this. So I think we should probably back out of that because there's a ton we could go over for such a quick, random, hey, let's review this. You ready to go into reviews?
Sure.
All right, you first.
4. 4 out of 5.
Okay, yeah. That's pretty good. I'm going to have to be honest with you. Because I get bored real easy, and you know that. There's nothing in this film that I didn't enjoy from beginning to end. There is nothing about this movie that I disliked. It's weird because it's not my most favorite of all time, but it's just really high up there. So it's going to be, I can't give it a 5. I'm going to give it a 4.9.5. It's really high up there.
Just give it a 5.
Just give it a 5.
That's close enough. Yeah.
Because I feel like there's other movies that are more perfect in terms of favorite. We'll just give it a 5. It's
Nightmare for me is a 5. I could never rate that anything less than that.
Yeah.
That movie is a perennial rewatch. The music we went and watched Nightmare. There's a thing that Nashville Symphony does where they play like a movie, but they have their orchestra there playing like the music.
I wish.
And it's so good hearing that music like that. When you hear all the different like instruments. But especially during Nightmare, there's music, there's instruments that I didn't realize were in those songs that whenever they played like live in front of me, I just appreciated the music so much more in that movie. And you get that goosebump effect or whatever, that fusing that we talked about, especially at the beginning of it, whenever you hear that dun, 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 like it leads in the This Is Halloween or whatever. I love that every time I hear it.
I've only been able to see a version of that like on TV where I'm watching the orchestra play, 4 people watching the film, and it's clearly not the same.
Yeah, even the acoustics are different when you're there hearing like the live, band playing it. So
yeah, the best we get out here is you get to watch it in 3D, and it's like, okay, it is great to see it in 3D. I'm not going to pretend it isn't, but I would love to see it to an actual, orchestra playing it. That would be definitely on my to-do list. We don't have that out here, though. How about this? In comparison of the two movies, if we were going to compare them, and by any chance I was going to give them both a 5, which obviously they both are, it's a 5+ for Nightmare Before Christmas, and it's a 5- for Corpse Bride.
No, I'll accept that.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So...
So for you, the corpse is reanimated and back to life for Nightmare, and it's just a really fresh corpse for the Corpse Bride.
Yes.
Okay,
there
gotcha.
We go. Slightly not as fresh. Maybe opened and left out on the counter for longer than 20 minutes.
So here's a quick question for you. So what is the state of blue collar BS? Because there is a lot of drama that's went on with all this since last time we spoke.
Well, there's not a lot of drama. Obviously, they got kicked off of YouTube for sexual content.
Which is so dumb. Unless was it even flagging the Hot Mess Express, or was it something they did on Blue Collar? Do you all know? Or?
No, they didn't say anything. They just said sexual content. You're out of here. Like no warnings. No, hey, fix this. No, you can't discuss this content. They just kicked them the fuck off. No courtesy whatsoever.
I don't understand the sexual stuff. We know that YouTube is politically based and can do stuff like that. It just doesn't make sense to me how they don't apply stuff equally, because I've saw stuff what's way worse than like say a Nicki Minaj like YouTube, like one of her videos or whatever, as opposed to anything I ever saw on Blue Collar BS, but yet they get kicked off,
I challenge anyone listening to type in porn in the search bar of YouTube, and it's not safe for work. At minimum, even if the video that you're potentially going to look at, even if it isn't actual activity, you're going to get full-blown vagina, penis, titties, everything. It shows it. It does not blur it out, nothing. You're at minimum going to get a still of actual porn. So the fact that they got flagged for sexual content is bullshit. Their page is called Blue Collar Bullshit, so I guess, So, yeah, the sexual content, that's irrelevant. There's no way. The worst we did on there, obviously, was the live waxing, and you couldn't see anything. Nothing. Not even close.
Well, and I've seen, even when you're talking about stuff like that, I feel like what was that one podcast, Caller Daddy or whatever it was
Call
called,
Me Daddy.
that was... Yeah, it was like, I feel like stuff they talked about on there was like way worse, and I feel like YouTube carried some of their stuff for a while. So what's the difference there?
So it definitely has to be political. The guys don't lean to a particular side; they're in the middle. So I don't know if YouTube didn't like that. Maybe they didn't go one side versus the other. It's really hard to say. Like I said, they didn't give any information. So you can catch Blue Collar BS soon on Rumble. And I will tell you this, we're not moving from YouTube, but we will also be available on Rumble when that happens. I plan on at least adding us to that. I feel like it's a broader audience of people looking for a specific thing, and there's a chance that we might do really good on that.
Yeah, there is. I don't feel like that market's as saturated yet.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm wrong in that, but I don't feel like it is.
We could be. So I have really been thinking about that. I know I haven't said it to you over, but I don't feel like it's one of those unsaid things that I'm like, oh, he's probably going to agree with this,
Yeah, I've thought about it for a while. If nothing else, to have a good backup, because even the biggest YouTube people that I know, they always post to Rumble and even Twitch, just because like they're going to get struck on probably YouTube at some point, just based upon the political climate and everything. So
oh yeah, definitely. So yeah, that's what's up with that.
All righty, well, with that, peace be with you
and with your spirit.